Welcome to the Quietly Visible podcast. I'm your host, Carol Stewart, founder of The Bounding Solution and author of Quietly Visible, Leading with Influence and Impact as an Introverted Woman. And this is the podcast for introverted women who want to thrive as leaders and in life. And today's episode is all about the power of authenticity. And my guest is someone who you're going to love hearing from. Her name is Sandra Addae, and she's a dynamic professional with a BA in journalism from the University of the Creative Arts, where she focused her projects on the intentional marginalisation of ethnic minorities in journalism. And in 2024, she launched a networking event for marginalised leaders called Ignite. Her career in broadcasting has seen her contribute to notable organisations including CNN, Billboard Magazine, Sky News and Drapers, where she honed her skills as a magazine broadcast journalist. She transitioned to full-time roles in marketing and communications, and she skillfully balanced her broadcasting career with positions at Flex Tech, National Geographic, UK TV, Discovery, Disney, Viasat, Media Trust, and All Industry Marketing, the founding agency of Orange Wednesday. She played a pivotal role in launching channels in the region, notably BET, Black Entertainment Television, and was integral to the merger of Showtime Arabia and Orbit, leading to the establishment of OSM, the largest subscription broadcast service in the GCC. And she's done lots of amazing things. She continued her professional development and gained an MBA with the University of Liverpool. And in 2013, she also founded Core Beginnings, which is an initiative dedicated to leadership development that focuses on executive coaching for women leaders, cultivating culture in leadership and developing future leaders. And she's also got an MA in executive coaching which further solidifies her expertise in the field. What an amazing woman. So hello, Sandra, and welcome.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much for having me.
Right. So the topic we're going to speak about, authenticity, or the power of authenticity, is a topic which is very relevant to a lot of introverted women who feel that they can't be authentic, or they're made to feel that they've got to put on a persona. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say about that. But before we go on to that, tell us a little bit about who you are, other than what I've shared in the bio. So who is Sandra?
Okay, so thank you, Carol. So I'm an ambivert, I would definitely say. So, leveraging both the extroverted and introverted tendencies for different reasons in my life. But what I am is a human strategist. I understand the power of the mind, the impact of the mind, and also the results of the mind. And we don't necessarily get taught how to think, we get taught how to do. So I teach people how to think, and that's really leveraging their neuro pathways and helping people understand that it's. I always use weight, and weight and relationships as examples because that's the best thing that people understand when you're talking analogy, and it takes time to lose weight, so it takes time to change your mindset. So this is the thing that I always encourage people, the 30-day thing of being successful in 30 days. I really am a proponent of people staying away from things like that because it
Mhm.
takes a lifetime of development in order to have sustainability and stickability. But I'm someone who enjoys fun. I like having honest conversations. I'm not very good at surface level stuff. Pretending to have small talk with people I'm never going to see again. So I don't do weddings, everyone. I don't do weddings. But I love meeting new people. I love music. I DJ on the side. I have a radio show. I have a podcast called The Millennial Coach, completely separate. It's like a fun version of me. But I just like to spend time investigating myself because I am you and you are me. So whatever
Mm.
I find in myself, I'm sure I find in other people.
Right. Wow. I love that. I love that. Yeah. And picking up on what you said about the 30 days things, that I think, that we see so much of that. And I think that that can be quite harmful at times because, if we've had a way of being that has been out the way for our whole lifetime, it's not as it's simple as just making that change in 30 days. As you said, it's
Absolutely
that
right.
some people aren't even aware of those limitations that they're putting on themselves and those ways of thinking that are getting in the way. And that can take more than 30 days.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
So the power of authenticity. Well, what
Yeah.
does that mean to you?
Um, so I do teach a lot about authenticity when I'm doing coaching sessions, and how I teach it is not teaching it, right?
Mm,
You live in the skin that you're in, and you live in what you've been taught in how to show up, not for yourself, but for others. So what it means for me is when you are authentic, is that you start showing up for yourself by yourself.
mm,
So being authentic is an individual journey. It's not let's do it as a team and blah blah blah. It's a you journey, not a we journey. And this
mm,
is the reason sometimes when how I think about it is, and I was listening to a chap, I believe his name's James Peterson, and he said that if you look into the minds of many men, and the men that we know that are doing well and etc. And healed, we're not referring to those men. I'm referring to people that don't live from a place of authenticity. And he was talking about relationships. He said, you'll be so shocked by what you see in their mind that you would run. But the thing about inauthenticity is we tend to show most of that rather than our authentic self for
mm.
fear of rejection. And the thing is, you're in the coaching space, so you understand what I'm saying. Everything I'm
Yeah.
talking about, it's really about invigorating your neural pathways to really start being an independent thinker, to be authentic. You have
Hmm.
to be, and you have to be critical in how you think, and not just, and the thing is, we spend so much time focusing on what's out there, but we need more time and focus on what's in here in order to
Yeah.
unpack the authenticity and inauthenticity. So we know about archetypes, right? So you may be the saboteur in certain situations. It could be relationships. But the thing is, you're a warrior when it comes to going to work.
Hmm.
Maybe if we reverse that and we could use the power of being a saboteur in some parts of the workplace that require your archetype to show up, and be a warrior in the relationship where you're looking for resolution. But the
Hmm.
thing is, we're not taking enough time as individuals to really get to know ourselves on a deeper level. So that's what authenticity means to me, is unpicking yourself in order to get to the core. Hence the reason my company is called Core Beginnings and my podcast is called The Core.
And that is so true in terms of what you said, that and picking yourself, because a lot of us have been conditioned in the
Absolutely.
way that we've been brought up to believe that we're not good enough, or we need to be a certain way that doesn't necessarily align with who we are. And this is not just for people who are introverted, but extroverted people, ambiverts, men, women. And you can then find yourself in an environment where and I see this time and time again in coaching, where you're different to everybody else, but you feel you've got to act and be like everybody else. You've got to code switch, or you've got to put on a persona and act in those ways. So first of all, before I ask you how people can go about doing that, tell me about you and the authentic Sandra. Have you always been able to be your authentic self?
Most of my life, yeah. I think
Mm-hmm.
I was about 8 or even probably younger. And that's when I was like, I don't want to do church anymore. I'm bored. Why are
Yeah.
we going to sit at the back? I don't enjoy. And then I started to tell my parents, okay, New Year's Eve, I'm not going to my uncle's house. It's painful. They're miserable people. And every year we sit in the same chair in their house. My uncle forbids us to talk to my dad. My parents are like hippies. My dad's like a Ghanaian hippie. So when I explained the way my dad is, people are like, oh my God, that's unusual for a Ghanaian man. He's so much
Mm-hmm.
fun. He's so intelligent. And so I've been I've been exposed to freedom of expression from a young
Mm-hmm.
age. And the thing is, it's been accepted in my household.
Yeah.
But also, this is where the independent thinking comes. My parents And one thing somebody sent me recently is we weren't raised by babysitters, we were raised by God. Because our parents didn't have time to stay home with us and look after children. The oldest had to take care of the younger siblings.
Mm-hmm.
So it was learning how to have a voice for myself and be heard, but also be an observer to be able to learn from other people's mistakes. And authenticity allows you to try things out, but being authentic is taking from it what works for you, and you stand in that in a powerful way. So if you are someone who speaks, like I couldn't walk down the street and someone's having a disagreement with you and being really unkind, I would actually stop and observe, because
Mm-hmm.
is this going to turn violent, and do I need to step in to help this woman, or can this lady can help herself, and can I continue on my journey? So as I care for myself, authenticity is really caring about how I feel as well as how others feel. So the authenticity lays into empathy, it lays into compassion, it lays into self-advocation, it lays into a plethora of different self-care methodologies that I can apply to myself, but also extend to others.
And it's great that you were brought up that way as being able to express yourself, because I know growing up, I was sort of from a household where, children were seen and not heard, sort of thing. You know, we couldn't express ourselves. I see that, that's based on how my parents are brought up. That when I had my son, I sort of made an effort to be able to let him talk and express himself and listen to him. And I've seen the results
Absolutely.
of that in terms of how he's grown up confident and that belief in himself as well.
But also, Carol, in addition to what you're saying in relation to your son, I
Mm-hmm.
think, when we talk about tone policing, right? One of the things about, I would say, being of a minority, and this is why I'm saying minority, not black, for distinction, because we are raised in cultures of emotion,
Mm-hmm.
right? We are raised of cultures that are animated and misunderstood. So one of the things for me, one thing I'm really good at is helping leaders bridge the communication strand between teams, because you don't understand the culture of that person. And I keep saying to people, you can have a culture in an organization. Nobody follows it. Because what happens is we all bring our own individual cultures to work. That's the first layer. The second layer is
Mm-hmm.
departmental culture. Then the third layer is organizational culture. So we don't have one culture in the workplace. And so when we're dealing with people and we're talking about authenticity, are people asking people who they are in order to understand how to work with them?
Which is
So
something we don't see happen.
exactly. And so one of the thing when it comes to living in a home, sometimes like my dad and me will be out driving, or I'll be out driving. He does all the sitting now. He's done his part. And he's been the parent. I'm the parent now. And I said to him, Dad, what was your dream? Because one thing we have to remember, we are so dynamic as individuals and multifaceted that if we don't spend time learning about people, we will assume people.
Yeah.
My dad is not just a dad, he's a brother, he's a son, he's an uncle. Probably in his spirit, he's a young man.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn about your spirit. I don't want to learn about the things you're expected to do. And the
Yeah.
thing is, learning about people's spirit is where you start birthing their authenticity and
Mm-hmm.
understanding them. So I definitely would encourage people that are listening to you and talking about being introverted. If you're working in organizations, I've had people say, "Oh, I don't like so and so." I said, "Do you know them?" And then people have come back to me and said, "You know what you said to me, to actually ask them, tell me a little bit about your family." It changes the relationship, because it becomes more authentic, because you
Mm-hmm.
tap into who they are, not what they do. And that's how to approach every human. If it's your parents, my sister was telling me, when I lost my job, I had a routine. I went out, got up every morning, I showered. And I was thinking, I didn't know this. So authenticity is about taking time to learn about someone's journey in order to have an appreciation for it. You might not understand it, you might not even like it, but you have an appreciation to understand their internal operating system, just like our mobile phones.
Yeah, and I think that that is important in terms of getting to know and understand people, particularly people who are different to
Exactly.
us, and getting to understand, and helps us to become more aware of our biases as well, our personal biases. And I
Absolutely.
mean, I remember when my son, he was training as a solicitor, he was doing his training contract, and he was a young black man from East London, and he was in this law firm with, and one of the managing partners, when he came to the end of his training contract, said to him how he'd learned a lot from my son
Wow.
because my son was different to him. And so, he'd probably never had such a interaction and got to know someone like my son from his background, which
Mm.
enabled him to learn so much from him.
And that's
And
the
I,
thing. When you're talking about that, what's coming to me is balancing your pleasure points and your pain points.
yes, tell me a bit more about that.
So, when we don't understand ourselves, we continue to do the same things that actually
Mm-hmm.
break or make us run towards a brick wall because we're always having the same results. So we have pain points in our life that we don't tend to unpick to understand why are they happening.
Mm-hmm.
So if we know what makes us joyful and we can keep doing it, why do we keep doing things that make us unhappy or
Mm-hmm.
unjoyful? And so it's about finding the thing that is a challenge. What do I need to change, or how do I need to look at it differently in order to get pleasure from it? Because if you can balance pain, because we know what pain's like, you fall over, you cut your knee, you wash the
Mm-hmm.
cut out, you put some antiseptic, and then you let it rest. You don't keep picking at your wound, do you?
No.
Because you want healing. But what we do, it's not that we keep picking at our wounds, we keep punching our wounds. And that's what creates that pain point. So for me, it's about what do I need to do to stop creating pain? And how is this pain point um, reducing the energy of my life? Because I always say to people, we have a certain amount of energy per day. How do you want to spend it?
Yeah.
So the deposits and withdrawals methodology is quite important here. When you wake up and you go to work, how do you want to behave on the way to work? Are you going to argue with people? Are you going to get angry? Or are you going to be joyful, listen to your music, smile at people? The energy that you cultivate creates pain or pleasure. But you need to decide what type of day you want to have. Sometimes it doesn't always go that way, but it's also tapping into how do I feel? Because how you feel will demonstrate the output you have with the interactions that you're going to have that day. That's what your authenticity is about, is what makes you tick. The pain will create painful experiences. The pleasure will create pleasurable experiences. But how often do we ask ourselves, how do I feel in this moment? And also, not just how do I feel to build authenticity, what do I need in this moment?
Yeah. So how would you, somebody who's never sort of done anything like this, they're feeling that they can't be themselves and being inauthentic, how would you explain to them how to go about doing this, to tapping into that so that they can feel more authentic?
So there is the inner work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the first thing is you need to really look at your beliefs, your belief system. You may believe that when I used to live in the Middle East, I lived in the Middle East for 7 years, right? And one of my members of staff, she came to me, Huda, and she said, Sandra, do you all eat soup before you have dinner? And I started laughing because she's probably watched all these British television shows and when, they have soup. And I said, look at what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
When you start doing the inner work, you start questioning your beliefs. Is what you believe about whomever or whatever to be true? That's the first thing. But then it relates to your values on how you value the belief, because
Hmm.
the value is how strong you feel about it. So this is the work that you need to start doing. So I would write out 10 beliefs on why do I believe those beliefs. And then on another column, I love a column, I love an exercise, right? So on the third column, you put your what's the value to you? What value does it bring to you, this belief? But with the value, how does it make you feel? What's the emotion that comes up? So then you start unpicking, actually, when you get to the emotion, is this the emotion that you want to feel in line with this belief and the value? Because when you realize the emotion is a habit, then you start realizing why you have the problems or the pleasures that you have. It's usually
Mm.
problems that we, as coaches, we work on. So let's focus on
Yeah.
problems. So in being introverted is not, there's nothing wrong with being introverted at
Mm.
all. And I
Not at
think
all.
this is why the work you're doing is so powerful, Carol, because you are telling people they are not broken. And people think there's something wrong with them. It's not anything wrong with you. You just prefer a different way of living.
Yeah.
I don't, and that's why when people come to me and say, "Oh, this is going on," I'm like, "But why do you think that there's anything wrong?" So it's about what is the belief around the experience, and then breaking that down through your beliefs, your habits, your emotions. Then one of the most important ways to really look at your authenticity is the language that you use. Language gives you access to different environments. So in leadership, you can't be going into a leadership meeting and say, "What's going on, people? What's going on, blood?" Like they'll be like, "Is Carol all right? Have you, I think we need to check in with Carol." You know, Language gives you access. So when you start being more authentic, start understanding the power of the language that you're using and whether it attracts or detracts from what you want. Because that will change. And the thing is, when you start changing your language, you start changing your internal, your inner work, your environment, then your external environment starts to change because how you really want to show up, you start attracting the tribe. So I would
This is
definitely say those are the things. Your beliefs relate to your values, they relate to your emotions, and they then demonstrate your habits and behavior.
mhm.
And then your language shows you who you're giving access to yourself, but also who is having access to you. And the question that I will pose to everyone that's listening is the people in your life, are these the people you want to represent who you want to be?
And if they're not,
Then you really have to start thinking about what work do I need to do on my inner world. So it's coaches like you, coaches like me. Some people need a little bit more than coaching and they may need therapy in order to clear out the debris because
mhm,
there's a lot of people walking around with a lot of stored trauma that has not been healed. So I always would say to people, seek some support, therapy, and also journal,
yeah,
because your journaling is going to express to you how you're feeling, because you read it back and be like, read your journal on a good day. That's one piece of advice. Read your journal when you're having a good day because it will tell you the modality of thought that you have and how long it lasts. If you read a week of your journaling, you will see, okay, I'm quite negative for long periods of time, or I'm actually up and down, or actually I'm very positive. I want to stay on that trajectory because then it gives you a starting point.
and those beliefs they're powerful in terms of how they affect how we feel and how we act and behave. Um,
Absolutely.
and a lot of times those beliefs they may not be grounded in anything that is true.
Exactly.
Mm.
One thing that we have to remind ourselves, and I think it's important. I may have an opinion of something, but it's not your responsibility to accept my opinion. Your responsibility is to have your own experience and come to your own conclusion in order to understand it from your authentic space. Because a lot of the time I might be like, "Oh, Carol's, she did X, Y, and Z to somebody." and then they would, you know, be your cheerleader and be like, oh my God, she's an awful person. But you've not had any experience with Carol. You don't, I didn't tell you my side of the story. This is another thing we don't tend to be authentic in, is telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God. So I think it's very important when you are being authentic, tell the entire story.
Yeah.
Carol wasn't very nice to me because I was late or I was disrespectful. I admit that, you know, I made a mistake, but I would like to clear that up with Carol. Do you have any tips on what I could do differently? Context is more important than gossip.
And you've shared some really great advice there, both for individuals who want to be more authentic and how leaders can better understand their team members and their authentic team members as well. So tell us about your work and the sort of people that you work with.
So I do a lot of transformational coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I am in the process of redesigning my brand, which is quite interesting now, and repropositioning myself, etc. But what the work I've done, I tend to, I don't know how to, you know, when we say transformation, what does that actually mean? You know, and that for me is just taking you from one mindset to another mindset, but from victim to victorious.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's how I describe the work I do, from victim to victorious. I
Mm,
really, you know, and I focus my work around the wheel of life. I really think that's such an important starting point. So the work that I've done when I've worked with different organizations, I work with exec teams, and I used to work in television, and then I transitioned into training and coaching and so on. And what I've done in the UK, from working in TV, is just work with different people, both in leadership and apprenticeships, and really help people navigate their landscape, you know,
mm-hmm.
and also I do it from a compassionate place. I really am with my coachee, and I'm on the journey with them. And the thing that I realize with a lot of people, they don't realize how many tools they have inside themselves, but they also don't take ownership of those tools. And
Mm-hmm.
so the work that I really am proud of is really transitioning minds through those neuro pathways and really making people think about and implement new strategies in their workforce, in themselves, in their families. And there was one, she worked in the pharmaceutical industry last year, and she came to me and we spoke about some of her challenges.
Mm.
And she felt very invisible, but she had made the choice to be invisible. She'd worked on my 3-month program. She was becoming more visible. She'd been invited to Zurich. She had to do a presentation for all the heads of departments across the world. So it was very interesting, from somebody telling me, I just want to earn some money, sit in the corner, mind my own business, to now doing a massive presentation in Zurich with heads of, and she's a team lead, she leads teams. That's
Mm-hmm.
the work that I do. I let you see yourself for the
Yeah.
greatness that lives inside you.
And that is powerful. That is when somebody can see who they are and all that they're capable of, rather than thinking that they've got to play it small, they've got to be invisible because they've been made to feel that that's how they should be, or that they're not good enough,
I,
or as you
I
said at the beginning about fearing rejection.
and I think, you know, we mentioned this earlier, and you're talking about how you parented your son. I want people to take away from the conversation today, and I say this with love. Our
Mm-hmm.
parents are not always right in how they've
Mm-hmm.
raised us. And this is where I challenged my parents. I challenged the Ghanaian culture. I'm like, listen, you can't just be telling me what to do. Like, I just don't agree with it. And this is why it's so important to know what pains you and what pleasures you, because you feel it in your soul when you are shut down by somebody. In your heart of hearts, you feel it's wrong. It doesn't align with your beliefs and values. And that's what I'm talking about, is really listening to that gut, because this is the navigation system that can literally save your life. The culture
And
plays a lot in how
Mm.
we authenticate ourselves.
Something that you just said there, that listening to that gut feeling, that instinct. Many people don't do that. I mean, it's something myself that I have sort of grown to be more aware of. But I do see that a lot of people don't. They'll dismiss it, or because of experience or how they've been made to feel, they'll shut it down.
And that's the thing, Carol. You said they have been made to feel it was outside of who they were. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the one thing I want people to take away. Or another gem is you may be taught how to behave, but you feel it's not the right way. So you
Yeah.
have to find the right way to behave in order to honor yourself. And if we honor ourselves, we have so much gravitas in the direction of our lives. And we don't
Mm-hmm.
compromise our integrity. We don't because the moment you compromise your integrity, we all feel it. I've heard people say to me, I knew I was marrying the wrong person. I shouldn't have married that person. I've had quite a lot of women say that to me.
Yeah.
And people say to me, I knew they did this to me, or I knew, because your spirit never lies. Spirit, if you, and that's really the emphasis of my coaching is the spirit.
Mm.
Your spirit never lies. So the inner work, that authenticity, is truly trusting yourself, because if you trust yourself, the universe will yield to you.
Mm-hmm.
The universe doesn't, people don't get the results they get because they don't trust the universe enough, or they don't trust God, or their whatever spiritual belief they have. There's not enough trust that things are going to work out.
When we're not authentic, it it shows, like other people can see when we're not authentic, and it can gradually chip away at us and how we feel about ourselves. It can, there's that misalignment between who we really are and how we're acting and behaving and how we're coming across, and it can be stressful.
Oh my God, the stress. The thing that people don't realize is, your stomach is your second brain, right?
Hmm.
And the thing is, the stress does more damage than anybody realizes.
Yeah.
Like anybody realizes. People don't get sick by accident. And I talk
Mm.
about on my podcast, I've got almost 100 episodes, but I talk about this all the time. Stress can manifest in a multitude of ways that you don't even realize is actually happening, and sometimes until it's too late. And so this is the reason when people do things um, that are inappropriate, I'm not someone who takes sides. I will call you out. Even if I like you and someone else, I have to call you out, because what you're doing is you're not being authentic to yourself.
Hmm.
And in order for me to function with you, I need you to sit in your authenticity, whereas I sit in my authenticity, so we have a healthy and harmonious relationship. When someone's being inauthentic, again, this is why your gut is powerful. You feel it. And the problem that we have is that we are in competition with each other when there is no competition. The problem that competition creates, it creates siloed behavior, siloed working environments. Now, if we worked in a collaborative state, it's more healthy to our self-esteem. It's healthy to our nervous system, and we don't have to go for so much somatic healing in order to thrive in an environment, because you already have created the environment collectively. And this
Yeah.
is why, when we do training and we talk about how we want to run the program, and what people, the do's and the don'ts for the whole environment, we need to have that in our relationships, and we also need to do a revision of our relationships. So don't assume that if me and you are friends, in 5 years we still feel the same way about each other, because
Yeah.
we change as people, and we need to be in tune with our change.
And that is so true. A lot of people, when I'm just sort of thinking now, people that I know, not just people that I work with, they don't though. They
I
don't.
know.
Mm.
And I'm an advocate for checking in, even with relationships, ask questions. Even sometimes I ask my dad, what does it feel like to be 87 and I have a
Hmm.
46-year-old daughter? Like, how does that feel to you? What does it
Yeah.
feel like to be a granddad? I said, what does it feel like to own your own property? Like, you have come as an immigrant. I don't know what that is. I don't know that experience. So when we are talking to people, understanding how they've changed over their time, is it congruent with who you are in order to stay in a relationship with them? But because we fear being lonely, you can be in a marriage for 30 years and be super lonely. You can be in a friendship. You've heard the term, I'm surrounded by lots of people, but I feel very alone. So authenticity is being honest with yourself. If we really were to strip it back, is to be honest with who I am at every given situation, but honoring that person. Because if you can't honor yourself, how do you move to the next version of yourself? You have to
Great.
grieve the old you in order to birth the new you. And that may mean shedding people. That may mean moving to a different location. That may mean being on your own. That may mean quitting a job and being an entrepreneur. But you are being authentic to yourself, because people who die, their regret isn't about how much money they did or didn't amass. It's about who they loved and withheld love from. And the most important person they withheld love from was themselves.
I think that is a great note to end our conversation on. Listeners, do take heed of what Sandra has said. She said some really good advice and golden nuggets about being authentic and utilizing the power of authenticity. So thank you, Sandra.
Thank you for having me, Carol.
So how
Appreciate
can
it.
people find out more about you?
So
Where's the best place for them to go?
you can go to LinkedIn. I'm linked to you. So Sandra Addae. And my website is www.core-beginnings.com. Or you can listen to my podcast, which is DA because the THE was already taken. The Millennial Coach. And honestly, you just Google it, everything pops up. I'm on IG, I'm on LinkedIn with both platforms, my coaching practice and my podcast.
Great, thank you. So do go and check Sandra out, listeners. Follow her on LinkedIn, listen to her podcast, follow her on Instagram. And yeah, so thank you, Sandra. And listeners, if you are wanting to increase your confidence and impact and you haven't completed my free assessment, go to my website, boundingsolutions.com. Under the free resources, there's an assessment that you can complete. Will give you some ideas about areas that you can focus on. And so until the next time, bye.